Hello and welcome back to Marxist Propaganda. This week we're taking a look at the third Marx Brothers film they made at Paramount, 1931's Monkey Business, which is the first of their films to not be based on a Broadway show. However, we're not going to get to that for a little bit. We're actually starting today with a short segment from the film The House That Shadows Built, a compilation film made up of shorts that was created to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Paramount Pictures, as surprising as it is given how long-lived the studio is, and used as a promotional film for exhibitors. And with a film coming out later that year, Paramount was showing off the Marx Brothers. The scene is a reworking of the opening scene of their Broadway revue, All Say She Is, and while some of the gags were reused elsewhere, the bulk of the scene would go on to be reused in Monkey Business, namely the Chevalier Impressions. The scene goes like this. Zeppo walks into a talent agency. Don't shut the video off. I promise you this is not some extended Aristocrats joke. Zeppo and the agent go back and forth in rhyme before Zeppo goes into his Chevalier impression. Normally I'd play it, but I'd rather not have you sit through it twice, and the one in Monkey Business is way funnier. Trust me. The agent passes, and then Chico comes in and gives his impression, before Groucho enters.
I want to speak to Mr. Lee. I'm a dramatic actor.
So, I see. I'm Mr. Lee.
Well, lend an ear to me.
Can you play a role?
Can I play a role? Do you know who you're looking at?
No.
Caesar's ghost. I play any kind of a role.
You will?
Now eat it up like that. I played a part in Ben-Hur once.
What part did you play, sir?
A girl. She played the part of Ben.
And you?
I played her.
After Groucho, Harpo enters, and you see that we get the handshake segment from the Coconuts redone, before it descends into chaos. And then the talent agent asks what they call that act, and they say, we call it the Marx Brothers. Okay, so I lied. Overall, it's a really good short, and it shows off their talent. In a way, it's like one of their films if you took out all the story stuff and the other characters. On to the film itself, we get a unique one, in which the Marx Brothers are essentially playing themselves, since their characters go unnamed, except in the credits, and I will be referring to them as such for the sake of organization. And it's a turning point for them, since it's their first film that wasn't based on a Broadway show, as I said earlier, but it was also the first to be shot in Hollywood, as opposed to Astoria Studios. That may also be why this is one of their few films to not feature Margaret Dumont. I imagine it was probably a similar situation to why Callista Flockhart left Supergirl, the change in geographic location. I will definitely be deducting points for that, just you wait. Monkey Business also had a crap ton of writers, the story going that at least 13 people contributed to the script, since Groucho thought the original script stunk, and that one of the writers was too intellectual. Regardless, the film didn't suffer, like most films that have as many writers, and it was a critical and box office success. But did I like it? Let's find out. The film opens on an ocean liner bound for America, and you can tell that this is their first Hollywood movie, because look at how cool the opening titles are compared to the still shots we got in the last two. I'm not knocking the last two, but this is definitely more visually interesting. While most of the passengers are paying their way, the Marx Brothers are not. They're stowaways.
Stowaways? How do you know there are four of them?
Well, they were singing Sweet Adeline.
The captain instructs his first mate to locate them, and we get a moment that has caused quite a stir among Marx Brothers fans. Is Harpo singing along during their rendition of Sweet Adeline?
Sweet Adeline.
Of course, we'll probably never know if Harpo was singing along, since very few people know what his voice sounded like, and I'm certainly not one of the people who does. Though perhaps it sounded like Ace Rimmer, given that the brothers are traveling in style in a set of kipper barrels.
Look me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast.
The first mate practically brings in the entire crew to search, but the brothers manage to evade them. The crew hoist their barrels out of the cargo deck to be used by Donkey Kong, and the brothers are left behind in classic slapstick fashion. Good old American craftsmanship on those barrels. They make a break for it and manage to get lost in the crowds of passengers. Groucho gets into an argument with the captain before he commandeers the captain's office, and he and Chico get into the wordplay scene.
Now, Columbus sailed from Spain to India looking for a shortcut.
Oh, you mean strawberry shortcut?
I don't know. Don't you know what vessel is?
Sure, I can vessel.
Now, one night, Columbus sailors started a mutiny.
No, no mutinies at night. They're in the afternoon. You know, mutinies Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Here's my argument, restrict immigration.
Wow, we usually have to wait for this scene. You can tell this is a Hollywood movie. They're giving away all the good stuff in the first half. This is another one of those loose narrative ones, so it's really just a collection of gags, but they're really good gags.
I said one goes around with a black mustache.
Well, you couldn't expect a mustache to go around by itself. Don't you think a mustache ever gets lonely, Captain? Tell me, has your grandfather's beard got any money?
Money? Why, it fell heir to a fortune.
And atypically, Zeppo actually gets more to do than just run around doing stuff for Groucho.
Is this yours?
Yes, it is. Well, as I was saying, there's a mighty beautiful country around here.
The trees are lovely.
Oh, you bet they are.
The real plot starts up when Groucho crashes the room of Alky Briggs and his wife Lucille, played by Thelma Todd, while running away from the first mate. See, there are two rival gangsters on the boat, the aforementioned Alky Briggs and Big Joe Helton. Big Joe's been in prison, so Alky wants to consolidate the gang so that he can take over the territories, but Big Joe won't give Alky permission. Alky tells Lucille to stay put while he goes out to talk with Big Joe. Additionally, Thelma Todd was one of their possible choices for a replacement for Margaret Dumont as a foil for Groucho, since she'll show up again in their next film, and while she's fine, I'm happy that they got Margaret Dumont back for Duck Soup in the following movies. Lucille hates that Alky gets to go off and do gangster stuff and keeps her stuck at home. Alky comes back and threatens Groucho, before deciding to use Groucho and Zeppo, who wandered into the room during the threatening, as hired guns, but they decide to fire their guns immediately.
You're fired. Did it as gently as I could.
Alky threatens Big Joe, and Chico and Harpo inadvertently become Joe's bodyguards after they wander into the room playing chess. Of course, you've never asked the Marx Brothers to do anything, because both Groucho, Zeppo, and Harpo and Chico fail at both attacking and protecting Big Joe, respectively. In the middle of all that, there's also an insanely humorous scene of Harpo losing a frog he had been keeping in his hat, and, you know, I think I'll just let the scene speak for itself.
I got a frog in my throat.
What?
A frog in my throat.
Oh, you've got a frog in your throat. You can't do that to my customers. Stand up. Hey, what's the matter with you? Are you crazy or something?
And I thought that Jim Henson had the best frog in my throat gag of all time.
I would have said I had a frog in my throat, but I won't say that.
The ship arrives in the port, and after Groucho crashes an interview with an opera singer...
Gentlemen, I'd say just this. The bicycle will never replace the horse. On the other hand, the horse will never replace the bicycle, which is quite a horse on the bicycle if I ever saw one, and I don't think I ever saw one. Is it true you're getting a divorce as soon as your husband recovers his eyesight? Is it true you wash your hair in clam broth?
I don't like this innuendo.
That's what I always say. Love flies out the door when money comes innuendo.
We get to the part that I've been excitedly waiting for, the passport scene. This is the most famous scene from this film for obvious reasons. As they're stowaways, they don't have passports, so the brothers have to steal one, and while Chico and Harpo have mixed results...
Well, I got you, didn't I? Well, you have to get up pretty early in the morning to steal from me.
He did get up early this morning, but you weren't here. Could he see you sometime tomorrow?
Ah! What's the idea? Put your hand in my pocket.
Just a little mistake. I had a suit once looked just like that, and for a minute I thought those were my pants.
Zeppo comes through with the passport of famous French movie actor Maurice Chevalier.
Hey, he looks like Chevalier.
Yes, it's a strong...
And I can look like Chevalier.
Well, I certainly look like Chevalier.
But that's not enough. You've got to sing one of Chevalier's songs to get off this boat.
As they attempt to get through, we get a hilarious scene of all the brothers doing their patented Chevalier impressions.
If a nightingale could sing like you, they sing much better than they do.
Never mind this.
If a nightingale sing like you, sing much better than you do. And okay, no push me. Get out of here. If a nightingale would sing like you, they sing much sweeter than they do. You brought a new kind of love to me.
If a certain man brought me the wings of you.
Incidentally, you may recognize the passport official as the talent agent from the short. We also get the spiritual successor to the flash joke from last time.
Passport. I said passport, not pasteboard, not washboard. Passport!
After they escape the boat and the brothers play doctor, we resume the story with the gangsters, as Alki plans to do something big at Big Joe's party for introducing his daughter. Although, I gotta admit, this is a weird way to introduce his daughter. Usually people just say, "This is my daughter," instead of throwing an elaborate party. I admit, much like the Coconuts, I don't remember much about this movie either, apart from the stuff on the boat, and really the part I remember the most is the Chevalier bit. So this rewatch is going to be interesting. This is a rare film for the Marxes in that it doesn't feature the typical young lovers plot, at least in the traditional sense, since Zeppo is the one who gets together with Big Joe's daughter Mary. Which is good because it makes me more invested since I already care about Zeppo, and we don't need to have some struggling architect or artist that needs to be established through clunky exposition. Alki schemes to plant two of his goons as musicians to grab Mary at the party, and while at the party, Zeppo talks with Mary, and Groucho does his shtick.
Run for your life. The Indians are coming. What? Put your scalp in your pocket. Here, the Indians.
Alki comes by to check on Groucho and tells him that they're going to take Mary to an old barn and hold her for ransom, the ransom being putting Big Joe under Alki's finger. After Groucho goes on to cavorting with Lucille a bit more, I think he's auditioning for the part of Salem from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. He does know it's a voiceover role, right? This is probably a good time for me to point out that while Thelma Todd is a good actress, she can't hold a candle to Margaret Dumont's straight woman.
Oh, why can't we break away from all this, just you and I, and lodge with my fleas in the hills? I mean, flee to my lodge in the hills.
I've been married for 4 years. 4 years of neglect, 4 years of battling, 4 years of heartbreaks.
That makes 12 years. You must have been married in Rumpus. Mighty pretty country around there.
Chico crashes the party by replacing the pianist, and he does his thing. And Harpo gets his harp on. But Chico makes a special request.
Play something nice. I tell you what you play. Play da-da-da-da-dum dum da-da-da-da-dum dum da-da-da-da-dum dum dum.
Hey, no fair, they used that song in the last movie. Mary gets snacked by Alki's goons, and Big Joe is despondent, but thankfully, because Groucho is playing both sides, he knows that she's in an old barn. I just hope they can save her before Professor Crashman gives her an electronic cerebrectomy. Though I bet Miss Piggy could probably save both Kermit and Mary before the Marx Brothers get there. Side note, how awesome would it have been if Groucho had lived long enough to be a guest on The Muppet Show? Oh, the sketches they'd have done. I mean, Veterinarian's Hospital was already Marx Brothers' level of wordplay. Can you imagine it with the man himself? After some gags with Groucho and Chico in the barn, they get into an altercation with Alki's goons.
Go on, you get him. I'll wait for you outside.
There's a chase, and Harpo joins in to save the day. Well, almost. Zeppo shows up and rushes to free Mary as Alki and his other goons return. And they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight. Groucho even tries to get the farm animals to join in.
I know, half a cow is better than none, but this is no time for puns.
Wrong. It is always time for puns. Groucho gives some commentary.
That one hurt. Come on, you palooka, stop stalling.
As Zeppo and Alki keep fighting. Holy cow, where'd he get that chair from? The ref's out cold and he can't be DQ'd. Oh, he's gonna get the championship belt for sure. Big Joe arrives to be reunited with his daughter, and the young lovers go off together as the film, very abruptly, ends. What's my verdict? Monkey Business is a strange bird, since instead of it being a thin plot wrapped around a bunch of gags, it's a bunch of gags wrapped around a thin plot. Remember that the main plot doesn't start until about halfway through, and Mary isn't even kidnapped until the last 10 minutes. That's not to say that the film is bad by any stretch, of course, just that after the brilliance of Animal Crackers, it feels like a step down. But at least Groucho got to sing, so it's better than the Coconuts. Especially since with Zeppo as a young lover, I cared about the same for his relationship with Mary as I did for Johnny and Arabella in the last film. That being said, the gags are solidly constructed, the story makes sense, and there's an actual resolution, short as it may be. So given all that, I give Monkey Business 3.5 Marxes. It's better than the Coconuts, but only just. I'd be willing to knock it up another point just for the Chevalier imitation scene, because of how much I adore it, but I'd just end up knocking it down a point because of the lack of Margaret Dumont, and as much as I might have criticized the previous films for lack of resolution, at the very least Dumont featured in the finales of the films she was in, but Thelma Todd just vanished after the party scene ended, so we end up back at 3.5 Marxes anyway. It's above average, but not one of my favorites as a whole. I actually went to the trouble of getting just a copy of the Chevalier imitation saved on my computer, because it's really the only part that I've ever desired to see more than once. Next time, since I know a lot of you are probably missing out on the traditional rituals of organized schooling, we're going to go back to college in similarly trying times, the Prohibition era, as they put Groucho Marx in charge of higher education in horse feathers. And you think this pandemic is screwing with your academic plans? See you next time.